All right, welcome to another lesson, grade 11 college with Mr. Horn. I'm trying to work on intros here, and I did it again. I forgot to share the screen, so I've done this already with audio only, but that's not going to be as good for you to learn from. So I have hit undo a bunch of times, and I'll walk you through the redo version of this. So we're looking at three-dimensional, representing 3D objects in a little bit of a different way, so nets and patterns. And there's a practice question here for you to do to practice the orthographic and isometric drawings. So this one has solutions because it's a little trickier, but try it. Make sure you're able to do this kind of thing. Visualize looking at this thing from the top, from up here, and from the front and from the side, whichever side you choose to look at from. And another one that's a little easier, you can do that one. There isn't a solution for that one. But if you need help with it, post a question in the post questions here discussion thing, and I'll help you out. All right, so let's get at it here. We're looking at the nets and patterns. So redo here, redo, there we go. So a net is a two-dimensional representation where if you're unfolding an object or cutting it along the seams and laying it out flat. So with a net, the key is they're always going to be one piece. And so, you think of like a soup can, right? If you were to cut along the top and cut along the bottom and cut along the side and roll it all out. So cut it along the side and roll it all out, you'd get a shape like that, right? So that would be a net. So depending on where the lid is attached to the side, it could be anywhere really along there, right? So there you go. So that'd be the side, that'd be the top, and that'd be the bottom. So that's a net of a cylinder, right? All right, so I can show the three-dimensional version of this as well as a drawing. The picture is pretty obvious, but if you're drawing this, you can picture the circular top viewed from an angle is like an oval. And so you'd have the ovals, and you'd have the sides connecting the top and the bottom which were ovals. You can show the back that's kind of hidden in the picture. Of course, it's not there, but it's kind of nice in a 3D drawing to have that. I think eventually here I'll get to, I might have to go to this page for that. Oh boy, I'm gonna do my redo thing here, but oh, that's just the other page, that's why. Okay, here we go. So what three-dimensional figure would that be? If you're looking at that as a net, pretty easy to picture probably the idea of flipping those sides up. They meet at the top in a point and make a pyramid, right? So the three-dimensional drawing is pretty easy to do. You draw a parallelogram and then you just connect the corners up to a common spot, okay? I tried to do another one to make it look better, but it was about the same. And then you can erase the line that isn't visible to make it look sort of more three-dimensional. So that should work. Next step here, isometric drawings, and then nets, right? So to kind of relate the two things. So the isometric drawing of this, I would have like that front corner drawn, and then you'll see here the smartboard kind of messed up on me a little bit, but eventually it started working again. So those edges, I extended them out on the main drawing too, right? You got those, there's your end piece there, visible, and the bottom side getting drawn there, and the back edge there, and so on, right? Just drawing it out in 3D. For the net, I decided to highlight the bottom, and so you have the bottom of the rectangle there, and then you think about this side flopping down and that side flopping down, and so on, right? And so if those sides flop down, you'd have that, and if the ends flopped down, you have that. So we've unfolded or taken it apart or whatever you want to call it, cut it so you can fold it flat. That's your net for that. All right. So then patterns. Slow this video down. Obviously, you can press pause anytime you want, but just whatever, right? Or speed it up if you want to go faster. Get the beauty of the YouTube video. So with the patterns idea, you want to have individual shapes. Okay, so a pattern, you're breaking the figure into individual shapes. And so clothing, for example, comes in a pattern, right? If you're looking at sewing something together. So if you're looking at making like a skirt, a basic skirt, you'd have the overall shape of it like that in green. And then you'd have like one in the front, one in the back, and you just literally just sew them together along the edge, and you'd have a general, that kind of shape. It'd be a skirt. And down at the bottom here, it talks about how you'd have like flaps for overlap for the seam allowance, they call it. Of course, if you're into sewing at all, it'd be really obvious to you. But you'd have these little flaps that would sew together, and then the only part you would see would be the sort of trapezoids that I originally drew. That's it for that part. If you had a t-shirt, you could at least make a t-shirt with that as a pattern, and then another one just like it, and sew them together, maybe with a seam allowance or whatever, and it can make that shape. You'll notice that t-shirts don't really have seams along the side typically, so they're actually made by a special like loom, right, that weaves a tube of fabric, and then they sew it together and whatever. So the pattern would be a little different, I guess. You could tell it would be there'd actually be a seam along here, right? So anyways, and I think there's usually a seam there though, so you'd have a pattern for that. But anyways, if you wanted to make a rough idea of a t-shirt, you could make it with the patterns I had, but you could draw out what they would be in reality if you want. Would you have the tube, and then you'd have it kind of whatever cut like that. So to relate back to that, there's this backpack video that we saw in the first introductory day of geometry. And so I won't play it again here. I'll post this video if it'll let me in the content page, so you can see it again if you want, or you can just go back to the lesson when we first started doing this, lesson 20, maybe 19 or 20, 18, 19, 20, something like that. Yeah. And so just one more here. If someone's making this dog house, and we're going to look at all the pieces you'd have to cut for plywood, that would be called technically a pattern, because you'd have these separate pieces, right? So the pattern for it would be a bunch of rectangular, a bunch of rectangles and this, compound or composite figure and so on. And this does just work through the question, basically showing the idea of it. So you can just go through that, and whenever you'd like, from the file that I post and so on. But you want to think of that as a pattern more so than a net, because it's like I said, it's a piece of plywood this shape and a piece of plywood that shape, and they just get mounted together, fastened together, or whatever, and you built a doghouse. So it reminds me of if you ever built like a birdhouse from a kit. You often get like a little bag of all the pieces, right? The sides and the top and so on, and you sort of nail it all together. What they gave you would be a pattern for a birdhouse, and you just have to assemble it. Okay. So as usual, the first page or so would be your practice assignment. There's one that was 2 pages recently or soon, I forget which it is. And yeah, just give those a whirl, and if you have questions, post them in the question discussion thing that's on the top of the nav bar or whatever, top of the screen in D2L, and I'll help you out. All right, so that's it for now, and yeah, we'll see you later.